Hey, Lashpreneurs, can you believe summer is almost over? My kids go back to school in a week, and I could not be counting down the days faster. I love my kids, but spending the summer with them while I'm trying to work, it's unpleasant. I'll say that. And I've been traveling a lot. In fact, I've just come off, I think, my sixth trip over the last 4 months. It has been a lot of saying yes to things, a little too much, but it's been awesome to be able to travel so much. I've been all over the world. I've taken vacations, I've worked, I've traveled, and my heart is filled up for travel. So I think I'm good. I have committed to no more traveling basically through the end of the year, except for a few trips back to visit my family in San Diego and then hosting my mastermind retreat, which is going to be in Charleston, South Carolina in October. Yes, I love our in-person retreats with our mastermind members. But today we're going to be talking about handling difficult clients and creating a win-win. And this is what you're going to have to learn to master when working with the public, is how to have tact and be able to remove your emotions from dealing with client complaints. And we're going to talk about that today because there's very few client complaints that you'll come across that don't have a logical, reasonable solution to them. And when logic is not being utilized by the client and they are lashing out at you, we're also going to talk about how you handle that to stay within your power and to create really healthy boundaries. I will say over the years of coaching and teaching and investing in my own education on how to create communication through both written and words and podcasts and content and social media and blogs and emails, I probably say I'm expert, even Olympic level in communication. So I've got a lot to say on this, and I've got a lot of ways to support you in having specific language to use when it comes to clients. So you might want to save this episode, start and listen to it every couple of months to remind yourself or even write down some of the phrases that we're going to go over today on how to handle some of this stuff. So we're going to go over the top 5 main client complaints that you may face in your business and how to create a win-win. Now, I know y'all are a bunch of people pleasers by nature, right? We don't get into this industry without wanting to make someone smile, to make someone want to feel good about themselves. Usually we get into this because we have felt good, beautiful, empowered, or whatever by a service we received, and that kind of inspires us to go in and create businesses around this so that we can create that magical internal transformation by something that we do externally for someone else. And the more that I work and dive into people's why, business owners' why in our programs as why they get started, there's a very common thread about this nurturing and wanting to make someone feel beautiful or to be responsible for someone else's feelings of confidence. Okay. So nothing wrong with that. What we run into when it comes to difficult situations is that same belief of or desire to want to please someone all of a sudden becomes counterproductive to operating a business. We can't please everyone. We're not meant to. In fact, the bigger your business gets, the more people that you're not going to please. And that's okay, because there are those that you can't please enough. Like they are just constantly happy with what you do and they just love you and they want more. It's the raving fans that we need to base our business around and not try to cater to everyone. Because when we try to cater to everyone, we end up making really poor business decisions, very costly business decisions. And we do a lot of people pleasing, and that gets us walked all over. And that can be very costly and expensive to do if we do it too much. Okay. Now, you are a business owner or an aspiring one if you're listening to this. So you are at your own free will to make whatever decisions make sense for you in your business. I'm not here to tell you how to run your business. I'm here to share with you different ways and different perspectives on how you will probably get closer to a result of having a stable long-term business by handling disgruntled clients. This could also somewhat work for team members and handling them. But we're going to want to do what Mama Lashpreneur, my mom, always told me, which is a little bit toxic, but also like very effective in the business world, which is take the emotion out of it. I always felt like that was really dismissive to me, who I felt like I was a little more emotional in my family than anybody else. But the power of being able to communicate clearly and logically, even in spite of someone else's emotional barrage on you, if you want to call it that, is really powerful. It helps you to stay in your power. And sometimes we need to allow ourselves to have emotions that is not in the moment, right? That is in a safe place outside of the confrontation of whatever's happening with the client to then be able to come back and have a logical solution. Okay, so let's talk about it. We're going to talk about the top 5 kind of disgruntled client complaints that we see typically, which is a client constantly rescheduling, a client being unhappy with the results, getting a bad review, getting a refund request, or clients not pre-booking out or booking again. Okay, so those are kind of the main ones we're going to cover today. So let's talk about clients constantly rescheduling. Right, it's like they've got an appointment coming up, and we're not talking about the ones that like do it, that have the that do it within like the 24 or 48 hours of your cancellation policy, because they should have a very clear consequence to that, right? If you don't, reschedule your appointment or you cancel your appointment within the first 24 or 48 hours, whatever you choose, or 72 hours, whatever your policy is, then you're going to get charged a certain percentage of the service. Okay, you should have that clearly stated in your policies, and stay to the end. I'll give you a link to my suggested recommended policies so you can have some language there. But if a client is constantly rescheduling, either you can let it go and just let them choose when they want to schedule. However, sometimes this does create a problem in the business. So let's say your cancellation policy is 48 hours, and this client at the 49th hour always reschedules their appointment. And so sometimes it might be hard to get that spot filled. Maybe it's constantly leaving a gap in your schedule, or maybe you're getting busier and that would have been a really valuable space to fill if you've had enough notice. Well, first and foremost, I like the best, the best defense is a good offense, or the best offense is a good defense is, well, if you can't fill that appointment within 48 hours, then maybe we need to extend our cancellation policy to 72 hours. I wouldn't go much further than that, but you can always adjust your policies to serve the needs of the business. So maybe you want to extend your policies to say within 72 hours. However, I have seen it many, many times how frustrating it is when a client is constantly rescheduling, especially when it leaves this awkward gap, or if it was like a full set and it's like a big block of time that it's lost out revenue, right? And you were anticipating that, and that spot was specifically saved for them. There's a couple of different ways by policies that you can correct this, or that you can minimize this happening. One would be what we teach in our Lashpreneur Society, which is that you're taking a booking fee, not a deposit, different language, a booking fee to reserve the space on your schedule. That's what they're paying for. And then that booking fee can be applied to their appointment. But really what they're paying for with that booking fee is to reserve the space on your schedule. So if they cancel, they lose out on that booking fee, right? You could charge a deposit, but sometimes they can just move the deposit or whatever your terms are, and still you're left with this space. So first and foremost is a really good cancellation policy, a really clear cancellation policy that your client knows. But also, how do you bring it up to the client? If it's getting problematic, how do we bring it up with the client so she stops doing it? So it'll depend on what service it is, but I'm just going to use the example of eyelash extensions. When they are moving their eyelash extension appointments, they may be getting where they need a fill rather than a full set because they keep pushing it out, or maybe they didn't think they needed it, so they pushed it out. But if this is constantly happening, ways to stand up for yourself would be educating the client on the fact that if they don't keep their scheduled appointment, then you're going to have to change it to a full set, and your next available full set isn't for 3 to 4 weeks or whatever, because they are missing their pre-booked, pre-scheduled appointment. You could do it where you offer a discount on pre-booking out appointments, right? That's a great way to get started in like conditioning your clients to pre-book out their appointments, is offering like a $5 off or 10% off their next service if they pre-book out at the time of the end of their appointment. So if they're checking out from one fill and they pre-book out their next one, say if you keep that appointment, you'll get a $5 or 10% off discount. And if they move it, it kind of defeats the purpose of having a pre-booked appointment. They lose that incentive, that discount. So that could be one way to be proactive about it. But let's just say this is a problematic client. She's constantly rescheduling. I would give it maybe 3 times that she does this, right? It's not uncommon for people to reschedule or get busy or not know when their schedule is and have to move an appointment. We're not talking about the one-off situations. We're talking about the problem children who are constantly doing it in its definite pattern. The 3rd time it happens, let's say in a time period of 6 months or less, right? I think that's a time to kind of have the conversation of, hey, I've noticed you've been rescheduling your appointments fairly close to the appointment time within a few days, and I wanted to just check in. Is this something where it's hard for you to keep an appointment, or would or what's happening here, right? So we can get curious without blaming the client, without making them feel bad. We're just coming from a place of curiosity because they probably have no idea it's affecting you the way it is. You need to take your emotion out of it and not come at the attack of like, can you stop doing that, or whatever attitude you want to get, because I know it's annoying and I know it's an inconvenience, but let's come from a place of curiosity to see if we can understand what's really happening, to see if there's a win-win or a solution that we can support them in. Now, they may say, oh, no, I just keep forgetting. I was like, oh, do you know we send out reminders, and remind them of where they can get the reminders. Alternatively, if it comes to the point where they just don't really have a good excuse, or maybe they don't respond, say, well, unfortunately, if this happens again in the next few months, I'm going to actually not be able to pre-book you out. You're going to have to call either the day of or a day or two before to be able to see if we have availability. It's, and you can say things like, it's unfair to a few fellow clients who are looking for that time slot that it's booked up until a couple of days before. So we'd like to make sure that those that want that time and that can make that time can show up. Okay. Now, she may get disgruntled. She may get unhappy about that, and that's fine. That's okay. We don't need to make it okay for her. She's the one that can't clearly keep track of her schedule, and that's okay. We're not trying to control her schedule. We're just trying to make sure that she doesn't keep jacking up ours. Alternatively, what you could say is that she needs to pay for the appointment in advance, and if she moves it, then she will be basically held accountable to the cancellation policy, or she needs to pre-book it in advance and it can only be transferred one time. There's a whole bunch of different ways that you can find the win-win to minimize that behavior happening. It could also be where you fire the client. Now, I never recommend firing a client unless your safety is at risk. I always try to find ways for clients to fire themselves if they're being problematic, which means enforcing a boundary, which could be that you require them to pay in full in advance. And if they move the appointment, they can only transfer it one time. Otherwise, they forfeit, whatever. You're going to have to look at what the legalities are of that in your state or province. But you want to make sure that she is signing something that agrees to that, so you have proof of that should she challenge it on a credit card. But what we want to do is make it where they don't desire to continue on with their business if they can't be consistent with it. I've even said to clients in the past where it doesn't sound like it's the right season of time for you to be getting consistent appointments for lashes, but maybe we can look at lash lifts, something that doesn't require as much maintenance, but still has a beautiful result, right? Try to sell them on a complimentary service that doesn't require as much time or as much frequency of appointments. That may work better for their lifestyle, and you still retain the client and still get the money. Okay, so look for the win-win in those situations instead of getting so fed up and so exasperated that she is so disrespectful of your time. In fact, there may be a trigger in there for you of disrespect based on your history, based on your childhood, based on your upbringing, that disrespect means you're dead to me, if she's disrespecting your time. But that's something that you are placing on her. That may not be her intention whatsoever. People are selfish creatures. She's probably only thinking about her schedule and has zero concept of how it impacts yours and the cost at which it comes. She's the client. She's not supposed to be thinking about your business and your operations, right? That's your job to do. And by way of policies and the way that you enforce them and or support her in making a decision that works best for her lifestyle, by maybe switching to a different service that doesn't require as much maintenance, can create a win-win. Now, ultimately, if you do need to set the boundary, I would make it very clear. It doesn't sound like it's the best fit for you to be receiving services here. I can recommend XYZ place. They have a lot more flexibility in your schedule. So when you're a solo artist, this matters a lot more than if you have a team and there's a lot of availability, a lot of openings that people cancel and move around all the time. But when you're a solo artist, it can make a very, very big gap in your income if somebody is constantly doing this. So find a way to find the win-win, make sure that your cancellation policies are incredibly clear. And if you have to, start to enforce a boundary or have them put their money where their mouth is, that if they should cancel, they either lose out on a discount or incentive, or that they have to pay in full for something and they're only allowed to transfer it one time, whatever. Get creative with it. Just make sure it's legal in your state to do that, because some places have laws about charging in advance. But again, if you label something as a booking fee or a reservation fee where they're reserving the time on your calendar, they're not actually paying for the service, and then that can be applied to a service should they receive it, that might prevent that from happening, because most people don't want to pay for something that they didn't end up getting, All right, so the second situation is a client unhappy with the result. Now, we can have a wild display of emotions around this, right? You are affecting someone's appearance. most of you, right? Most of you, what you do is either, very visual to the public, or it's very sensitive to them in private, you Brazilian types. So with that comes a lot of ego and self-worth and confidence, okay? It is a beautiful thing when we can help someone see just how beautiful they are on the outside, while we all know they're beautiful on the inside too, for the most part, right? Except for that one girl. You know who I'm talking about. No, but when we look at clients and we are affecting how they appear to the world and the way that they view themselves, beauty is discretionary, and a lot of women are not talked up to or not told that they're beautiful a lot growing up. In fact, they are put down a lot. They are seen as valuable by the way that they look. And so we've got a lot of pressure and responsibility in our hands when we are affecting their appearance. And so if we go in the wrong direction, if we don't make them look good, feel good, if we highlight something that they're insecure about, you are going to be the one that is going to get the emotional reaction and projection. Okay. So I think we've all had this experience. If you've been in business long enough, you might have not done something the most flattering on someone and they don't like it and they want to make it clear to you. I remember one specific situation where I had this girl's permission I had like her sign the consent form that I could use her photos for marketing purposes. And it was a good lesson for me. So she came in with, the chunked up, like multiple, like damaged lashes on her, right? Where chunks and chunks and chunks of glue had been put on. And so as a natural lash health specialist that I promoted myself to be, she sought me out because she had heard from a friend of how healthy my work was. And, she was having a lot of pain with her natural lashes being ripped out by the work she was getting done at another place. And so when she came in, it was like, yep, that's not going to work. We're going to have to take these off and then put her through what we called lash rehab and get her natural lashes healthier. But she was going to have a much lighter set for a while until her natural lashes regrew, because she had, little bald spots and very thin, weak, frail lashes. And so I took before and after photos of the current work. I took photos in the middle of it without her having lashes on to show the damage. And I didn't crop her face enough. So she was very recognizable. Now, I was small potatoes at this point. I think I had maybe 200 followers on Instagram, which back in the day, local business, that was pretty decent. But she followed me, but she was worried about all of her friends following her and seeing her in that light where she didn't have lashes on. Now, she was an aesthetic nurse injector, I believe. And so was very, very, sensitive to her appearance and her public appearance, because she was a nurse injector. She wanted everybody to, she was kind of like the model of what you looked like when you had beautiful work done. And so she was none too happy with me about sharing those photos. Now, I had her consent. So legally and contractually, I had her permission to share whatever photos I needed to. But ethically, was it okay for me to keep those posted photos up if it made her uncomfortable? Could be debated. And I did debate, like, I'm sorry, you signed the photos. And they were great educational photos. Like, it was a huge selling point to show what bad lash work was and to show what damage, lashes look like and how bad lash work can, damage your natural lash health. And here I was being the natural lash health specialist. It was a great selling tool. However, it came at the detriment and the cost of the client's confidence. And she was none too happy with me. And I don't blame her, right? I should have cropped her out more. There was ways to go around it, but instead I decided, take the photos down. It's not worth me, her being upset about this and leaving a bad review and like, her being unhappy and not feeling beautiful. That was like the opposite of the direction that I wanted to go in with this business, even though I think it would have been like really convincing for other people to see what good work was versus bad work. But she was unhappy with me. Okay. So again, with a client, something like a client satisfaction guarantee, which I recommend you having in your policies. When we have something like a guarantee, we can minimize the risk of someone being not sure that they're going to love the results. Okay, so they may see all your work online and think that you do beautiful work, but maybe it wouldn't look great on them. When we have something like a client satisfaction guarantee, it allows clients to feel comfortable that they're not going to have buyer's remorse and that there is some sort of remedy if they're not happy with the result or the experience. And so when you communicate a client satisfaction guarantee before they've ever received a service from you, It opens up the communication. You are taking the lead as the business owner to communicate. If this happens, then this happens. If X happens, then Y happens. If you're unhappy with the results, let us know within 72 hours and we will, schedule an appointment for a fix or whatever the solution is. If you don't have any sort of client satisfaction guarantee, then you kind of have to come up with each case by case scenario of how you're going to correct it. Whereas if you have a client satisfaction guarantee, it states very clearly to the client, A, if you're not happy, we want to know about it because we want you happy. Like our whole goal is to have you walking out of here feeling like $1 million. Now, most of the time that will happen when we have a good consultation. However, we may miss the mark sometimes. And if we do, then we want to know about it so we can make it right. When you establish that relationship and that expectation and that communication before there's ever a problem, guess what's likely to happen should there ever be a problem? They communicate with you instead of going to go leave a bad review or never coming back or talking schmack about your business, or, it's just, we don't want unhappy clients. So when you have a client satisfaction guarantee and that's communicated directly up front, that if for whatever reason, they're unhappy with the results of the experience, please give us the opportunity to make it right with you. That is our whole goal. So when we communicate that up front, even if a client is wildly upset, you have your policies to back you up, right? You can even communicate at the end of the appointment. If you notice a client is underwhelmed or she's just frustrated or unhappy or just quiet and like downtrodden, her whole attitude has changed and you can tell she's not happy. You can remind her of that client satisfaction guarantee. Let us know within 72 hours. I will follow up with you tomorrow just to see how you're doing over text message. If for whatever reason you want something changed or altered, please let us know. We'd be happy to do that. I can kind of tell that maybe this isn't what you expected. And we really want you walking out of here feeling like $1 million. So go sit with them for a day, see how you feel. And then tomorrow I'll check in with you, right? So there are ways that you can be proactive in a client being unhappy. If a client is wildly unhappy and starts to berate you, starts to get aggressive with you, and this will happen for any of these situations, I want you to feel within your power to set a boundary that it's not okay to talk to you like that. It wasn't intentional or whatever it is. We're not going to own up to, that we try to make them look crazy or whatever they're accusing you of. I want you to feel empowered to say, I totally understand that you're upset right now. And I think we need to both let our emotions calm down. I know I'm getting worked up and I want to handle this in the best way that honors you. So please allow me 2 days to come up with what I think would be the best solution. And I'll reach back out to you by phone call, email, text, whatever works best for you. Okay. But allow yourself the time. That's going to be really, really important for you to take the emotion out of it. You need to let your emotions come down when somebody is threatening you, attacking you, who's really upset. It doesn't feel good. And oftentimes where I see a lot of not so great situations get worse is when the business owner starts to attack back or they get defensive and deflect what the client is saying. The client is telling you valuable information even when she's upset, right? She's telling you exactly where it went wrong that can be helpful for you to improve your processes moving forward, whether it's the experience or the results. She's giving you valuable information. We just oftentimes can't hear that when we go into fight or flight mode, right? Or freeze mode, depending on your survival instinct. If you perceive that you're being attacked by someone, you're going to go into fight, flight, or freeze, okay? Or fawn, right? The survival instincts. If you are a default to fight, that's probably the hardest one to come back from because you're going to attack her back. That's going to ramp her up. Nobody is calming down. If you go into flight, you're going to kind of like crumble and just want to hide and not address the situation. If you go into freeze, you're going to freeze. You're not going to respond. You're not going to react. You're going to feel, they're going to be like deer in headlights. If you go into fawn, you're going to go into people pleasing, trying to make it right and do whatever you can to make her stop feeling that way, even though, what's done is done. So generally speaking, a client satisfaction guarantee can help with unhappy results. You can get her back in. You may offer a discount for a future service. It would really depend on the situation. But really the key thing here, and with a lot of them, is finding out the data. And it's hard to do that in the emotion of it. So this kind of leads us into number 3, if you get a bad review. So this would be an unhappy client would be somebody who is telling you they're unhappy by either in person or letting you know privately. A bad review is when you get publicly told that they were unhappy with the result or situation, in which case you want to go on a data or a fact-finding mission. This is how you help take the emotion out of it so that you can actually logically problem solve for whatever the issue is. So let's say you get left a bad review. person left a scathing review. It is just paragraphs of how awful you are or whatever. So look through the reviews when you're not emotionally charged. It can be very hard not to take that stuff personally, but really it's not personal because they don't know you. It's just the business. You got to be able to separate the meaning that it's placed on you versus the perception that person has of you. They're two different things. Okay. She doesn't know you well enough to be able to make a personal attack on you, even if it feels personal. So give yourself some space, some nurturing, let your emotion come down, and then you can logically go into it. In fact, you may have a partner or a friend look at the review for you to see if they can pull out what the data is saying. There's important data, even in bad reviews, that can help you refine your process. And the way that you can take the wind out of somebody's sails to try and attack you is by actually agreeing with what they're saying. They have nothing to fight against. They have nothing to resist. So if they're saying like, she charged me for, a cancellation policy and I never knew this, and she's just a scammer and she's just out to get money, da 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 da. Chances are your process for communicating policies isn't effective. And that's the data point that's in that type of review. Now, the personal attacks of you're a scammer and all that, if you're confident you're not trying to scam people out of money, then you can let that run off your back. Okay, I've used this example before. Assuming you don't have purple hair. If I went at you and told you how dumb I thought your purple hair was, how disgusting it looked, and made you look like a troll, it's awful, it's horrid, you look hideous. Are you going to be affected by that? Are you going to be like, oh my God, Tara hates my purple hair, but I don't have purple hair, but she's so angry at me? Or are you going to go, Tara's a little cray-cray because I don't have purple hair and I don't know what she's talking about. She must be thinking of somebody else because I don't know. I don't have purple hair, so I don't know what she's getting all bent out of shape for. Same thing if somebody makes personal attacks at you. If they're saying you're a scammer, you're a con, or whatever language accusations they want to make towards you, if you know yourself, and those are not true about you, then you can say that that's their projection onto you and that has no truth and you don't need to get emotionally dissuaded by it. Okay. So first and foremost, understand your intentions are good. Look back at your intentions. Were my intentions to defraud this person? No, my intentions were to make sure that my business is protected. So where was the disconnect between her experience and my intention? Chances are it was communication, right? Most of the students that we have coming into our programs suck at communicating policies because of the people pleasing, right? You worry that if I communicate policies that have a cause effect, or I have to enforce a policy, I may be able to communicate them, but enforce them? Heck no, because I want you to like me. I need you to pay me, right? But what that actually creates is harder situations to keep everybody happy. Your policies are in place for your business to be successful, for a win-win-win, a win for the business, a win for you, and a win for the client. And when those policies are violated, either on your end or theirs, it doesn't create the win-win-win. So we need these policies to protect the business, to protect the profitability, so we can stay open and provide these amazing services, so that we can keep the doors open, so we can keep clients coming in, so that we can make money and everybody goes away happy, right? But when we don't enforce the policies, the system starts to break down. When we make little allowances for policies like, oh, she was just late that one time, or, oh, I'll just add on a few extra minutes because she didn't, wash her lashes and one's a little more sparse, or all of her lashes fell off over the last 3 weeks and now it's a full set, but she only booked the fill. And I just don't want to tell her it's a full set because I know she's going through a hard time, or I don't want to charge her cancellation policy because I know her dog died like 6 months ago and she's still distraught about it and I don't want to trigger her. Like, we start making all these allowances, and that's where clients learn how to treat you, is by the way that you allow yourself to be treated. So anytime that we're handling a bad review or an unhappy client, we've got to take the emotion out of it and we've got to seek out the data. And again, you can always ask for time to be able to allow your emotion to come down so that you can find the data and really decide, is there a problem I need to solve in this? In which case we can be very grateful and express gratitude to a client for pointing out that there are gaps in our processes or our ways of communicating, and we have fixed those, right? So can you imagine a really, really upset client? And I've seen Coach Victoria, you guys have heard her on the podcast many times, and we worked through this many times with her. She's genius at this, right? It's really, really, really hard for somebody to stay upset when you're grateful that they've expressed themselves as they have. Because all of a sudden they're like, oh, well, I can't fight against that, right? You can't be mad at somebody for being grateful for you. It's really, really hard. You should try it. But let's just say that, let's go with the cancellation and you charge their card and they ripped you a new one online. If you respond to that review, not necessarily to directly address the person who wrote the review, but also for anybody else reading it, because we're creatures of, that car accident sound, the screeching tires, we always want to look. So when there's a bad review, we're going to go read it. And it matters more how you respond as the business owner than it really does about the review. That's really going to give more social proof of what happens when something goes wrong and how this business handles an unhappy client than any positive review will do. Okay. Because you guys have probably seen it when businesses get catty and defensive and blame the client in a bad review exchange, that it looks really terrible on the business. So when you go back and you come with the facts in your response to a bad review, all of a sudden it takes the weight out of the review. Either it makes that client look like a crazy person, which we're all aware, especially reading reviews. Sometimes people get a little wackadoo. Okay. So if you have facts that state, here is where we discussed, let's say, your appointment was booked online. And as part of the online booking process, you do have to agree to our policies. Then when you had your first appointment on July 1st, we also went over policies in person as a part of the consultation, to which you signed off on every single one of our policies, including the cancellation policy. We also let you know that you would be receiving reminders. We send out a reminder through text message and email 72 and 48 hours prior to your appointment, so that you can be aware the appointment is coming up and be able to cancel in a timely manner. And unfortunately, you canceled on June 30th, which puts you within the 24-hour point. So that's why your card was charged, right? If you come back with the facts, they can't argue that. And anybody else reading it goes, oh yeah, that client was totally in the wrong. She had many opportunities to be aware this was happening. If you don't have all of that information, right, chances are they didn't know the policy. Just because they ticked a box in a booking software doesn't mean they know your policies, doesn't mean they read them, doesn't mean that they personally agree to them, which is why it's so important that during your consultation for new clients specifically, that you go over the policies and have them sign off on it, so that you both are on the same page. So that any point you need to have the boundary enforcing or the policy enforcing conversation, everybody, at least in this exchange, has agreed to it. We have proof that they were told that. Now, they may need to be reminded of it, right? You can always do that as a one-time exception. This is a one-time exception to you canceling. But from here forward, from here on out, you will be charged no matter what, right? And we teach this in depth inside of the Lashpreneur Society about handling policy-based conversations. But that's how you get somebody to either feel heard, seen, understood. When a client is that unhappy, when anybody's unhappy with you, when anybody is coming out of emotion, aggressive, angry, distraught emotion, chances are they just want to be seen, heard, and validated. Doesn't mean you have to take ownership of whatever it is that they feel you did wrong. But you can even say statements like, I hear what you're saying, and I'm going to make note of this, and I'll get back to you with a response by end of the week, right? That's how you can stay within your power and not have to make claims or decisions. A lot of times people just throw out discounts or free services, just trying to appease the client. I would hold off on that being your default, because what you're training the client to do is, if they don't want to pay or they want to get a discount, they just have to act out. And that's training the wrong behavior. And a lot of people will take advantage of that, unfortunately. So you don't always have to offer the discount, especially when you have a team and there's a client that's really unhappy with the team member. Please don't throw your team member under the bus. Please don't, automatically default to the client is always right. Now, there is something to be said about making the client feel like they're right, but we don't want to throw our team members on the bus, because clients can come and go, but our team members are investments into the business for the long term. So go on a data finding mission, get the client story, get the team member story separately, right? And then compare the facts and look at what the data is, and then make a decision from there. Okay. Let's go into refund requests. So oftentimes when clients are unhappy or they don't, it wasn't the expected result, they will request a refund. I highly, highly, highly recommend having a policy in your policies that talks about no refunds. Okay. This is where the client satisfaction guarantee comes in. You'll see if you go download our policies, which I'll tell you here in a second, that it is very clear we don't offer refunds. I think in the policies it states something along the lines of, you're paying for the artist's time and skill, you're not paying for the results, right? And so we're happy to accommodate an unhappy result or experience with XYZ, whatever the client satisfaction guarantee is, but To repeat, no refunds will be given under any circumstances, right? Once a client has paid, you can't unpay the time that you spent giving her the service. Okay. So you can have that client satisfaction guarantee. Again, that minimizes the risk that if they're unhappy, instead of giving them their money back, that there are other solutions and options. Now, again, it's your business. If it's easier to get the client to go away and you just refund them, by all means. But it just becomes a little bit more complicated tracking money going in and money going back out if you're constantly refunding. Okay. And then last but not least, clients not rebooking. Now, this is not necessarily handling a difficult client. However, because this is a little more passive, if clients don't rebook, right? If they come in once and there is some sort of recurring maintenance to the service, whether it's waxing, facials, lashes, if the clients don't come back, it's generally for two reasons. Either they didn't like the results, or they didn't like the experience, or the combination of the two. And based on either when they cancel a pre-booked appointment or them not rebooking, you can kind of make an assumption as to which one it was. If clients are unhappy with the results, there's a couple of different things. So if they pre-book out an appointment, chances are they liked the results and they had a good experience. But if they cancel it before they come back, it was likely the results. Either all of their lashes fell out or it didn't grow out the way they thought it would, or over time they didn't like the results. If they didn't like the experience, you tend to know that right away, right? If they didn't jive with you, if they felt super uncomfortable, you'll kind of, if you're paying attention, you'll kind of notice their attitude, how they are at the beginning versus at the end. If they're not happier or the same at the end and they're less happy, chances are it was the experience they didn't like. If you notice when you do the reveal of whatever it is and they take a look and you kind of start to see their body language sag or their face kind of start to drop, they're not happy with the results, so they're not likely to pre-book out. You can always send a survey or a follow-up, but sometimes people just don't want to take the time to inform you. They just want to be done with it. So you can kind of just gauge that. You're going to have to get really good at picking up on people's body language and the words that they say when they try to put you off for not booking out. You can always try to give them an opportunity to come back maybe in 6 months at a discounted rate. We teach to a "we miss you" promotion for past clients, see if they come back. But if your clients are not happy with the results or the experience, or you find that, you'll get 10 new clients in a month and only 1 or 2 actually come back for repeat services, you have what we call a leaky bucket, meaning you can try to get a whole bunch of new clients in, and if you're not maintaining them, then you're going to have a really hard time ever getting fully booked, because you have a large volume of people coming in, but they're not happy. They're not getting what they think is value for the money that they're spending. So instead of discounting your prices, you actually want to fix whatever the issue is. Could be that your breath stinks. I don't know. Could be that the bed is uncomfortable. Could be that it was really loud or distracting, or you were constantly on your phone, or maybe you were chewing gum, or they felt super uncomfortable. Or I know I've had it when I get my hair blonded. Sometimes there's some people that my scalp burns because they've gotten the bleach so close to my scalp, and I don't want to go back and I end up with like red marks and sensitive skin. Brazilians, if you guys leave hair, like if y'all do Brazilians, your client should never think about you post appointment until it's time to come back in. If I'm going home after my Brazilian and I'm having to tweeze anything in like the next few days, I don't want to think about you, right? Like I don't want to be upset with you. So those may be things to think about. You're going to have to get really savvy at picking up on why clients aren't coming back. We can support you in that in the programs to really find what the data is telling us. It's really interesting to look at data at timing of cancellations, or when clients don't come back, or what services they received, how many times they came back, to see if it's the results and or the experience. There's ways to improve both. All right. So in summary, in handling difficult client situations, give yourself time to handle whatever emotions coming up for you, and don't react in the moment. Allow yourself some time. You're going to have to get really disciplined at not letting the people pleasing, trying to accommodate a client or appease a client when she's really upset. Acknowledge that she's upset, right? Validate that she's upset, and say that you will look into it and figure out a solution and be back to her by the end of week or beginning of next week, however you want to phrase it, to allow yourself some time for the emotion to come down. If you respond in the height of the emotion, it rarely works out to your benefit. Okay, we want to come at this from a logical business strategy standpoint, not a I've got to please you because I'm worried you won't like me, or I'm worried that you won't want to come back to see me. We're not trying to, heal your inner child in dealing with this client. We're trying to give you a moment to let the emotion come down so that logic can kick in. Then once logic is ready to kind of play, we want to go find the data to see what we can do to improve upon our processes. You should have processes in your business that lead to a very happy, satisfied client who wants to come back. And anytime you have these difficult clients, chances are there's a process issue. Could be that you're marketing to people who are very price sensitive and very demanding, and it's a target marketing issue that are getting these types in the business who don't appreciate what you have to offer and don't want the work that you do. Could be that your application process needs improvement, or your styling, or your retention, or your skill set could be improving. Could be that we need to improve our client experience, that we're not really thinking about them as clients. We've solely focused on us getting our business open, that we've kind of neglected the fact that these people want to be pampered. They want to feel seen, special, and that they're investing good money into you, that they work hard for, to be able to have this experience that hopefully lights them up, right? And once you've gotten all the data to look at it, really check in with yourself. When you're getting emotionally dysregulated by an unhappy client, what is it that you're perceiving is the threat to you? Are you worried that she's going to tank your business? I know I used to have those fears. Like if a client, I remember I didn't start my Yelp account for like the first 4 months I was open because I was so afraid of a bad review. But in reality is that most clients were leaving good reviews. And so I was missing out on opportunities to have all these good reviews because I was afraid somebody might leave a bad review. So I was missing out on an opportunity to grow my business because of fear. But chances are you're taking their information personally, like it's a personal attack to you. And when you can look at it from a data perspective of, she is giving really intense feedback on processes that aren't working. This has nothing to do with me, but I'm the one that is responsible for improving those processes. I can start to come from a place of curiosity instead of feeling like I'm being attacked, or I need to be defensive, or fight, flight, freeze, whatever. Okay, so that is my top tips for handling difficult client situations and creating a win-win. If you want to learn more about business, how to grow your business, how to create more sales and create more profit so that you can take home more money, the Know Your Numbers Masterclass is coming back August 18th. Mark it on your calendars. We're getting very close to registration opening up soon. I believe next week I will have for you the link to go sign up for that class. We offer it on a special discount only one time a year, and this is that time. So get into the Know Your Numbers Masterclass. It's happening August 18th live, and I will have a link for you next week. In the meantime, have a good one.